Hello and welcome to the Witness History podcast from the BBC World Service, first-hand accounts of events that have shaped our world. I'm Mike Lanshin. And today we're going back to Iraq in the 1950s to hear about one of the country's early feminist pioneers and the first ever female government minister in an Arab country. Her name was Dr Naziha al-Dulaiimi. I've been speaking to two people who knew her well.
In our house, we used to see her as our second mum. She was a magnificent lady, very conscientious, very approachable when you want to speak to her.
She was a leader, and we looked to her as our leader.
That's 87-year-old Mubaj al-Baban, remembering her old friend Dr Naziha al-Dulaimi. They worked together in the formation of one of Iraq's early women's organisations back in the 1950s. Laith al-Dulaimi, Dr Naziha's nephew, has equally fond memories of his favourite aunt.
When we were young, to my sisters, she always told them actually, always respect the culture of the place where you are and never insult it, but always have an opinion and express it.
Expressing her opinion seems to have been second nature to Naziha, who grew up in a middle-class household in Baghdad, which was always full of books and political discussions. Her father had been a civil servant and a scientist, and Naziha became one of the first women admitted to Baghdad's medical college, when Iraq was still a monarchy under British control. The young Naziha, like many of her generation, was fiercely opposed to the undemocratic Hashemite rulers.
When she graduated as a doctor, because she was against the governing regime, she was deliberately actually sent to distant places near the borders with Iran, in Misan, in Amara, and then in Suleimaniya. But she actually turned it very well in her favor by really befriending and having so many friends everywhere.
Working with Iraq's disparate communities and sects seemed to cement the young doctor's growing political awareness and her sympathy for the plight of the women she encountered. In 1948, she became a member of the influential Iraqi Communist Party, and she set about forming what became known as the Women's Liberation Society. She spoke about that time in an interview which was recorded in 2006.
I like medicine, but I like my country more. Our first activity was to open branches in Basra, in mid-Euphrates, and then in Mosul. I used to go there and hold meetings with the women and talk to them. They were easily won over, and many became members.
Mubaj al-Baban, who was 10 years her junior, was asked by Dr Naziha to come along to one of the early meetings of the Women's Liberation Society. She remembers the hall being full of professional women.
Doctors and pharmacists and teachers and lawyers, whatever. And of course, they represent all society of Iraq.
And what did you all do? I mean, what was your work with the women out in the communities?
We used to go to desert, we're taking medicine. And you used to teach them how to read and write and solve their marriage problems. Because lack of education, because lack of everything, we tried to make it better.
This was almost subversive work, and the women often ran into problems with the authorities as well as with some of the husbands. But times were changing in Iraq, and the days of the monarchy were numbered.
Without warning, revolution has swept away the young King Faisal of Iraq and his uncle Crown Prince Abdul Ilah. Iraq becomes #1 danger spot. Veteran Premier Nouri Es-Said is deposed. He has fled, and the Republican rebels have offered £10,000 for his arrest.
The first day of the revolution, it was the best day in my life. Everybody went to the streets, children and youth, and everyone went out to show their support for the new regime.
With the violent overthrow of the monarchy in July of 1958, a left-wing nationalist regime came to power, and Iraq's Communist Party got a seat at the top table. Dr Naziha was asked to join the new government, as she recalled in her 2006 interview.
The leader's guards contacted me and said the leader wants to see you. And I said, why? We've only just met recently. But I took the bus and went to the Ministry of Defence and walked in, and met him. He said to me, "I want you to be a minister." And I said, "I'm just an ordinary woman. I don't know how to run a ministry." And he replied, "I want you to be the minister for the municipalities. You have to take it on."
In the male-dominated world of Iraqi politics, this was a hugely significant appointment. Dr Naziha became not just the first female minister in Iraq, but across the whole Arab world. In her 3 years as a minister, Dr Naziha pioneered slum clearances in Baghdad and created the first large public housing projects, including in what later became Sadr City. Together with fellow female campaigners, she also managed to convince religious leaders and the government to approve a new secular civil law that guaranteed women's rights in marriage and in inheritance. Her nephew says it was amongst her greatest achievements.
She told me she went to Shiite scholars, Sunni scholars. She went even to in Sinjar, to the Yazidis. She went to Christian monks and this Christian priest to ask them about what they think. And she came up in a very, very good law. It was a law that actually unifies all Iraqis regarding to this sect. And until now, it is regarded as one of the icons actually of progressive movements in Iraq. And it is seen as very progressive as compared to similar laws elsewhere in the countries around us.
She wasn't just a campaigner and a minister. Dr Naziha also wrote extensively about the status of women in Iraq, collating for the first time data and information about their lives. But when the left-wing government was ousted in a coup in 1963, she was forced to go into hiding. 5 years later, after yet another coup, she returned to public service, becoming the chief inspector of hospitals. These were more stable times for the family, and her nephew remembers regular visits to his favourite aunt's home in Baghdad.
She used to give me the most boring task of archiving and indexing all the journals and newspaper from all over the world that come to her, daily ones, weekly ones, just put them in order. You know, she was very funny, like insisting, and she used to get very, very assertive.
But in 1979, when Saddam Hussein seized power, when dozens of government officials were purged and executed, Dr Naziha was forced to flee into exile.
She came in one night and she said, "I'm going next week." So I asked her, "Are you coming back?" And she laughed. She said, "We'll see." So we understood that she's not, that she was threatened and she had to leave.
She settled in Berlin, and her nephew Laith didn't see her for another 12 years, until he himself moved to Britain to study. In exile, she continued writing and campaigning for women back in Iraq until she became ill in 2002. She died in Germany in 2007. Her old friend and fellow campaigner Mubaj al-Baban also left Iraq when Saddam Hussein took power and settled in the UK. Naziha used to visit her in London, where Mubaj still lives.
I miss her a lot. Of course, I consider her like a big sister. What can I say? I am very saddened because she is gone.
That's Mubaj al-Baban speaking to me, Mike Lanchin, for this Witness History podcast. You also heard from Dr Laith al-Dulaimi. They were remembering Iraq's pioneering feminist, Dr Naziha al-Dulaimi. And just before I go, here's news of another BBC World Service podcast you might be interested in listening to.
We have to really face reality.
Urgency, even more urgency.
We need to pick up speed because it has been taking too long.
We all know we need to do something about the climate crisis.
Coal is a challenge. The more coal you bring online, the harder it becomes to bring it offline.
So why do we find it hard to do that something?
Locals here tell me although those practices are illegal, they are still happening.
On the Climate Question podcast, we ask, how can we overcome the challenges we're all facing?
If you don't involve local people, then your plan is bound to fail.
With stories, discoveries, and solutions from around the world.
The Climate Question from the BBC World Service.
This is a very real thing that the Maldives is facing and struggling with right now.
Search for BBC Climate Question wherever you get your podcasts.